Guys, this is our second lecture. We're going to do a little overview of safety, just like we've done an overview for health and nutrition. So unintentional injuries are the primary cause of death among children under 14 years of age. So this could be falling, transportation, and more than 200,000 children under age 14 are treated each year in U.S. hospital emergency departments for playground-related injuries as well. About 68% of the deaths that we have at these ages, so 5 to 19, is due to injury-related causes among this age range, which is children and adolescents. So 68% of the children who do die, it's injury related. I think after that, it's homicide as well. So quite a few, we have a lot of concerns about safety because of the numbers of children who are unintentionally injured or unintentionally die during this age. And a lot of the unintentional injuries and why we need to prioritize safety is because young children are especially at high risk for this because they have a limited understanding of cause and effect. For sure, if we were looking at Piaget, our earlier periods of cognitive development, cause and effect are difficult for children to understand. Around 7 and 8, they get better at it and they're able to kind of practice those skills, but I wouldn't consider them really strong. Our infants and toddlers really don't have cause and effect. They don't know that if they fell off of a playground equipment, they could break something, they could hurt something, they could get stitches. They just don't have that kind of understanding. That's why proper supervision is so important. And then in high school, children have more of the formal operational cognitive skills that Piaget knows of. But adolescents also in their brains are kind of working with impulsivity. So maybe they'll understand cause and effect, but they will be too impulsive, or they'll understand cause and effect. They also have this kind of brain phenomenon and kind of age and social emotional phenomenon where they don't think it's going to happen to them, that they're invincible. So they'll get it, but there'll be other things that are kind of preventing them from making good choices about injuries and safety. A lot of times children will also have immature motor skills, so they can see somebody do something like jump over a ditch, but they themselves can't do it because they're just not big enough, or they haven't mastered jumping yet, and then they can fall in the ditch and get hurt. And that happened to my younger sister. I was jumping, we were in North Carolina, and I was jumping over kind of an irrigation or drainage ditch next to the roads that they have there. I know it sounds really funny. We don't have very many of them here. Every once in a while you see them. They're just like cut up areas in the dirt next to roads. And I was jumping over one of them and she completely missed it because she didn't have the motor skills to do that, and she fell in the water and cried, and it was yucky water too. Inexperience as well. So you have not tried these things before. So hopping and jumping are new to you, and applying those in situations like irrigation ditches or out hiking or at school or with your friends. If you don't have the experience with those motor skilled kind of techniques, that can be difficult. And then just plain old child exuberance. They're excited to be outside. They're excited to be alive. They've got their wiggles that they need to get out, and they jump and fall and get hurt. So how do we kind of manage safety? A lot of it is supervision and making sure that we have our correct ratios, and that's why they're younger with our infants and toddlers, is they need more supervision so that they're learning things, and also so that they are safe as well. A lot of it is awareness and implementation of safety practices. Like scissors, we probably wouldn't have scissors out in a toddler or young preschool classroom. We still want them to be cutting. That should still be part of their curriculum. But I might not trust a 2-year-old or a young 3-year-old just to have them out and to not like cut their hair, cut somebody else's hair. And that's not so much a safety issue, but we probably also haven't taught them how to walk with scissors. And that could be a safety issue as well, is that the blade should be pointing down and you shouldn't ever run with scissors. So it's not something that we would expect younger children to be able to do that. So part of that implementation is knowing developmentally appropriate practice and when and how you should have scissors. It also requires that adults be aware of their own well-being and circumstances that might make them less effective in monitoring children's safety. So you need to take care of your own self. You need to make sure that your own needs are taken care of, that you're not too tired, that you are not too stressed, that you are ready to be at work and to be present at work. And then also you need to make sure, as far as your circumstances, that you've been trained in this as well. Like if I ever moved to North Dakota, I would need additional training on like snow and wind chill and things like that I've never experienced in Southern California. Tornadoes probably. I'm really not good. I know a lot about earthquakes because I've been in a lot of earthquakes in my life. It's a huge Northridge one and things like that. I know all of the procedures. I would probably still be really scared if I was in a classroom, but I would know what to do. But if I went to North Dakota and there was tornadoes and snow, I would then need to be trained so that I could monitor children's safety in situations like that. And then as always, it requires us to be positive role models. So we should not be doing dumb things in the classroom that are unsafe and modeling that for young children. You'd be surprised at nap time how many times I come in and see teachers doing really dumb safety things in the classroom. Like I came in and somebody was putting things on the ceiling with thumbtacks nonetheless, but standing on a rolly chair. And I was like, that is a fantastic way to break your leg. Is that the way you are looking for? And she was like, no, I'm fine. I'll have somebody hold it. And I'm like, why don't I get you a ladder? And then also don't use thumbtacks. So we need to be positive role models of safety as well. Some developmental areas and risks to be aware of as well. Our developmental age definitely, or our developmental ability influences the type of injuries that we're likely to sustain. So an infant is going to have a very different injury than a school-age child. So an infant, because they're crawling around, they're low on the ground, they might be picking up things on the ground that we might not see. They put everything in their mouth, so they might have an unintentional risk of poisoning or choking as well. Mobile toddlers as well, but they are now moving, but they're kind of off center, so they're more at risk of banging their head on something, cutting their head on something as they kind of learn how to be mobile. Preschoolers are known for their exuberant jumping and running and no cause and effect skills yet. So jumping off of playgrounds, I really hurt myself because I jumped off of a playhouse because I thought I could fly. So I thought that if I really, really flapped my arms long enough and hard enough that I could fly just like a bird. And I did not, and I fell and I got the wind knocked out of me, and I'm very thankful that it was just that and then I wasn't really hurt. So jumping off of things, rolling on things, once again, kind of magical thinking, and also that kind of exuberant spirit of the preschooler. Then school-age children are probably learning more, but they are probably trying to impress other people. They are probably seeing other people do things that maybe they don't have the experience to do with their gross motor skills right now. And so they are also going to be out in the community, transportation risks, crossing the road, getting in, going to vacant lots, and maybe cutting themselves, hurting themselves as well. So we have 4 principles of risk management that we're going to kind of cover that we need to be thinking about when we're overviewing safety. The first one is advanced planning and selection of toys, equipment, and activities. So I've never had this opportunity, but I would love to pick out my own school, to start my own school from scratch with everything that I would want. And that would be toys, play equipment, and activities. But I have been lucky enough to design a playground and then also be able to see it come into fruition when I worked at the Marine Corps base. And so that requires a lot of planning, making sure that we have enough space. So how many square footage does each child need to play by age? There is the amount of square footage that children need in order to stay safe on a playground. And then the equipment that we had, it was a toddler playground. So some of the decisions we made, what kind of surface to have underneath the play equipment, we decided not to have any kind of swings, not even really low ones. Instead, we wanted to prioritize that that space with a built-in sandbox with shade over it, which was really, really amazing. And then we also were able to invest in some really, really nice sensory tables as well that could stay outside. And we could have water right next to the sand, which is really nice in our hot summers. And then making sure that the activities are also for that age as well. So they need to be developmentally appropriate and also address their interests and abilities. Because once again, we live in Southern California, not like South Dakota or North Dakota. So what they're going to be interested in is probably not snow. So we could teach them about earthquakes in a non-frightening way. And they could learn about how the plates move and shake, and once in a while we'll have tremors and things like that. We want to make sure that the toys are safe, the play equipment is safe, and the activities are safe for the developmentally appropriate kind of age range that we're working with children. Our second one is establishing and consistently enforcing rules. So your rules should reflect an understanding of children's developmental age and their interests and their abilities. Your supervisory skills and the number of children needs to be what licensing says that it should be, and it should be as low as possible in order to adequately supervise children and make sure that they are being safe. You couldn't do that if you had 50 children, if you were having to watch. That would just be impossible. And then rules must be stated in positive terms and be appropriate for a specific activity. So one that you might hear a lot is up the stairs, down the slide, but that's very positive. So children walk up the stairs and down the slide. A lot of times children like to go up slides, and that actually is developmentally like a good gross motor skill. So if I was doing it, I would say stop and reverse, and then everybody could go up the slide and down the stairs. And then let them do that for a couple minutes and then reverse, and then they would do the opposite again. This to me minimized kind of the dangerousness of a preschooler. If somebody's going down the slide and somebody's going up the slide, that can be some kind of danger, like that could be dangerous for a younger child whose gross motor skills are not quite there yet. So this allowed them kind of both ways to access the slide, but also minimized the amount of kind of accidents and unintentional injuries as well. Another common one is, instead of saying stop running or no running, walking feet. The third one is providing quality supervision. So once again, you have to follow your ratios. Your ratios should be as low as possible because that's when most unintentional injuries happen out in outdoor play. And that's often the time when supervision kind of changes as well. That might be a lot of times when we do breaks. So we need to make sure that the people who are giving breaks are good at supervision, know what their ratios are, and know about unintentional injuries, and have enough activities for the children to be playing with. So not everybody is being exuberant again and running around on the playground. Once again, it also relies on the developmental abilities. So if you have inclusionary programs or programs specifically for children with special needs, your ratios change, and you need to have more staff in order to keep children whose maybe skills, once again, are not typical or they're not meeting their milestones at the same time. They would need help as well. And then teachers should be trained in first aid. And first aid is really easy to get now. And there are people all over North County who provide it. If anybody wants the company of a guy that I always go to, I really like him because he's funny. He tells good stories. He keeps the day moving because I do like a morning first aid and an afternoon CPR. And so like 8 or 9 hours is a lot, but he's super funny and he keeps it moving, and lots of breaks and getting up and standing and activities. So for a teacher, that's like perfect. No teachers want to sit through just nothing or just sitting all day because, you know, we've been trained not to do that. But we definitely need to have our first aid and CPR. And then your program, we're going to have specific emergency policies and procedures depending on where your emergency door is, depending on the developmental needs. So getting an infant out of a classroom is really different than getting a 3-year-old out of a classroom. So what are the policies and procedures about putting children in cribs? Where do you roll the crib to? For our 3-year-olds, what is the rule about shoes on or shoes off during nap time? Those are some instances of schools having different policies and procedures. So some schools require that children sleep with their shoes on in order to get out of a building if there was to be an emergency. And other programs allow children's shoes to be off. Even if there was an emergency, they could get them on or they could do it outside. And safety education is in the third part of risk management. So we should always be training. That should just be part of what we're doing, because unintentional injuries are so serious and emergencies are happening more and more. We should take advantage of formal time, fire drills, having the firefighter come, having the police officer come, and then we also should be spontaneous. If a child asks about it, if there's an opportunity to learn more about it on a spontaneous, because you're reading a book or a child is interested, then we should run with that as well. And then we should also gradually help children to develop self-protection skills as well. So the skills that they're going to need to be able to go forward and to be safe. So the skills in gross motor ability, the skills in cause and effect, so they know what's safe and what's not safe as well. And then the skills to be able to be okay in an emergency as well. So not just blindly understanding the policies and procedures for one place, but being able to apply the idea of getting out of a burning building or taking cover in a earthquake is important skills that will serve you for the rest of your life as well. And I'm actually kind of trying to look into that, because I have heard that our earthquake procedures have changed a little bit in like the last year or two. So I'm going to be looking into that. So part of that is being able to keep your skills current as well. Safe toys and equipment. So manufacturers' ages change are not always true. They're true to them legally, but they're probably not true to us. So typically they skew young, or they skew old, so that a child who is maybe ready to play with it would say that they're not, and because legally it has a small piece in it or something like that. But you need to know your own child's abilities and limitations as well. So if your child does have a special need, they're very oral motor and they're always putting things in their mouth, you know, maybe they're ready for the Monopoly, but at the same time, you wouldn't want those tiny little pieces in their mouth. If you do it, you're going to need supervision or something like that. We always need to make sure that we have non-toxic materials for children. So like wax crayons for our little ones, and then crayons and markers and paint that's non-toxic. Making sure that sensory materials are non-toxic as well. If you let children paint with shaving cream, making sure that the first ingredient on the shaving cream bottle is water. And then that they don't eat it as well. I mean, you could eat it, it's not going to hurt you. I've seen children eat a lot of shaving cream. It just gives you a really yucky stomach. And then avoiding toys with small parts for young children, that's a choking hazard. And some children will continue to put things in their mouth well into preschool. So knowing your class, knowing who's who, we need to make sure that our sharp edges are always rounded as well. So if a child was to fall, they wouldn't crack their head open or need stitches. We typically don't want projectiles, which are things that shoot up in the air. So if you're going to be doing volcanoes or the Mentos and Coke, you're going to need to take a few safety precautions. That was more in school age when I was in school age programs. If you put Mentos and Coke, it explodes. So we would just have to make sure that we had kind of a splash zone or a safe zone where the children couldn't be, so that if something projectiled up, it was not going to hurt anybody. We also did it with rockets, but they were foam rockets, so that they hit you. It was just foam and it didn't hurt. Loud noises can be really stressful to some children, so we want to make sure that we limit the amount of loud noises, especially because prolonged loud noises can actually start to interfere with your long-term like auditory health. So we don't want lots and lots of loud noises, or playing that radio all day long as loud as possible. Just kind of becomes annoying background noise, and it's not really music. And then it can, at a certain kind of decimal, it can hurt your ear health. So people who do like weed whacking a lot, they have to wear their protection because we want to protect their ears. So part of that is also being the safety of and health of your workers. So if you are lucky enough to have a gardener at your program, they should be wearing safety goggles so that they can protect their ear health. And then long strings or cords, I have them right now. Let's see if you guys can see them. This is my office. So like these types of cords right here, this could be a strangulation hazard. So it is in my office, and I have older children now. But if it was to be looped and they could get it strung around their neck, it could be a strangulation hazard. Safety in toys, we need to make sure that they're not too challenging and not too below children's skill level as part of developmentally appropriate. So we don't want things that are way, 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 way too hard. And we also don't want things that are way beyond their level, well, way under their level, because then they'll just be bored. And that's when they might start being unsafe with them, cutting their hair instead of the paper, making paper airplanes instead of coloring. And if it's too challenging, they'll also kind of stop and go find something else to do as well. Recalls and recommendations are huge as well. I know that whenever we see big ones, I would always put them on a bulletin board or on a window in the classroom so the parents could see them, so that they would know, because quite frequently, products do need to be recalled because somebody will choke, because somebody will be hurt. And it's good to let parents in programs know about this as well, so that they can keep their children safe at home, because these are typically materials that anybody could buy. And so we want to make sure that they are safe for all children. And then the last one I have is a picture right here, a little one in an adaptive chair, so she can sit and play in the sensory area. And then we have a teacher nearby providing those good ratios and supervision for safety. And then there are 3 names for the 3 children. So if you wanted to minimize overcrowding in areas, that's a great way to reduce safety issues, is to have only a certain amount of children in one area at a time. 3, I mean, you could probably have another 2 children here and that would be fine. But one way to manage that and for the children to manage it themselves is that they put their names in the center that they're going to be at, so then they can count, okay, there's 5 people here and I can't join because there's not another clip for me to put my name. So that kind of helps them understand how many people can be at one center or another. And minimizing kind of crowds can also reduce the amount of unintentional injuries as well. Only provide our materials that pose no safety risks. So once again, making sure that they are non-toxic. They can't, it doesn't have small pieces that young children could swallow. And then on field trips as well, we need to plan well. We need to make sure that we have all of the seat belts and all of the car seats that we might need, that we have transportation, that we have a person who has the right kind of license in order to operate the transportation that we have. At a school district, it's pretty easy. There are drivers that are union and trained, but at smaller programs or preschools, you might have to hire a driver, or you need to make sure one of your staff has maybe the special license for operating that vehicle. You need to make sure that you have enough supervision, because supervision does go down. It goes down dramatically when there's a water element. So if you were going to go to a pool or a beach, I think it's 1 to 2, 1 to 4, even for preschoolers. Even at the zoo, what's everybody going to wear? How are we going to do ratios? How are we going to keep our sandwiches cold? So there's a lot of thoughtful planning that goes into that, because we wouldn't want to send everybody with a sandwich that has mayo on it and it's not refrigerated, and everybody gets food poisoning because they ate warm mayo 6 hours into their field trip to the zoo. Medications still need to be administered, so you'll have to bring EpiPens with you. You'll have to bring that medication in a locked box. You also need to have a first aid kit, and you'll need to have emergency preparations in case you needed to leave. Typically, you'd have some kind of policies and procedures for getting out of the space that you're in, or how you would shelter in place, and then your notification procedures as well. So you would need to have every name and number of the parents or guardians for the child who's on the field trip, and you would also need to have the medical consent forms for every child who's on the field trip as well, which is typically 2 or in all of that information, all of that, lunches, medications, first aid kits, binders full of all the information for the parents, plus a cell phone, plus a clipboard is probably 2 or 3 large backpacks for the adults to wear. And then you're typically going to have quite a few parent volunteers as well, so that supervision can be increased so that children are safe and they won't wander off or become lost or unintentionally injured. Feeding and care guidelines for classroom pets. And I was just thinking about this because we don't know why or how the coronavirus kind of started. I've heard snakes, I've heard people eating whole bats. So I wonder if that is going to kind of change classroom pets. I wonder if we're going to be able to have guinea pigs, or, I mean, I don't think you could have a bat in a classroom because it's nocturnal. It would be sleeping all day. But hedgehogs, snakes, reptiles, I wonder if that's going to change in the future, for knowing that like transmission from these animals could lead to something like that. But something that you need to have is you need to make sure that nobody's allergic to bunnies or dander or anything like that. And then they need to wash their hands before and after taking care of. And this just says after. I should have written before and after, because you want to protect the bunny or the animal or whatever it is. And then afterwards as well, washing 20 seconds with soap and water before touching it or handling it as well. A lot of them are soft and cuddly, but other places, excuse me, have been having tarantulas. My daughter's TK classroom had a tarantula, and my daughter was terrified of it. It was near the Legos, and she'd never play with Legos because she said that it was staring at her. And we have plenty of Legos at home, so she wasn't missing out on anything. That's the animals as well. When I was growing up in 4th grade, I went to this hippie school when we lived back east, and they used to have a bunny that would just hop around. And when I was a kid, I thought it was kind of funny and cool. Like, it would just hop around and just poop, and people would have to clean it up. And now as an adult, I'm like, that was really unhygienic. Like, we just, like, literally in the hallways, like, there was this bunny, and one time my mom just saw something move out of the corner of her eye, and she went to kind of like kick it out of the way, and she accidentally kicked the bunny. Preparing for emergencies, we're going to do more on this. This, once again, is just a safety overview, but disasters and serious emergencies are rare, but we need to make sure that we respond to natural disasters like our earthquakes or fires, technological or accidental hazards. So one time we had a gas leak at a school, and we had to evacuate from that. I added pandemic illness. Typically we wouldn't kind of emergency evacuate, but a lot of places have had to shut down. So that might be interesting at what point that you would consider it a pandemic, and maybe have to close a school or do pickups from the curb, which is what my daughter's preschool did for a while. And then threats against personal safety. So this would be kind of the violence that we've been having, so active shooters and things like this. So these are what we need to be prepared for, and we're going to go more into that in another lecture. I wanted to highlight how lucky we are to be in Southern California. So I put snow and tornadoes and floods, because yes, we have earthquakes and earthquakes and fires, but we don't have these types of natural disasters. And so in other lectures, we're going to go into having plans, supplies, how you practice your plans and your drills, and how you inform families as well. All right, this is the first of 2 lectures. I will see you guys online.